Well, moms and dads, and thank you for the young folks who are joining us. We would like to welcome you to this session on how to raise a responsible child. And Anne Marie, we're going to have fun with this session. This is a fun teaching time for you and I.
It certainly is, and certainly speaking from a mom's and a grandma's perspective, I know that there are so many issues that we constantly deal with in trying to teach our children to become responsible, but there's one phrase that hopefully by the end of this teaching we will strike from our vocabulary, and that is, how many times must I remind you to do whatever that is?
That's right. That's right. Have you kids ever heard that before in your home? Maybe once or twice? You know what? I think to begin this teaching, honey, I want to turn everyone's direction to our monitor. We're going to watch a vignette. This is in the morning time at the Johnson household. So let's all take a look at this special vignette and let's see what's going on in Mrs. Johnson's kitchen.
Do you kids have everything ready for school? I don't want to have to remind you once we get in the car.
I think so.
Who turned on the TV?
You did, Mom.
Well, we don't need the TV on in the morning. Patrick, what is this?
Oh, Mom, that's my banana peel from Monday's lunch. I was wondering where I put it.
Monday? Patrick, you're supposed to empty your backpack when you get home from school. I've been reminding you of that. Seems like I remind you of it every day. Oh, Whitney. Whitney, you were supposed to have gotten this signed by your father last night. Honey, remember we've talked and talked about you getting your paper signed before you go to bed.
I'm sorry, Mom. I forgot.
And what if Mom forgets, huh? This family would be in big trouble. Okay. Patrick, did you remember to make your bed, and did you remember to feed the hamster?
Oh, yeah, I've got to do that.
And Whitney, did you remember to pick up your room? Remember, you're supposed to do that before you come down for breakfast.
No, not yet.
You said that yesterday. You better get it done tomorrow. You know, I'm always reminding you kids of everything. When are you going to start accepting responsibility? Hello? Oh, hi, Mom. No, just getting the kids ready for school. Oh, no, I don't think so. I am really tired. It's like I'm weighted down with all the pressures of the day and it's only morning.
Well, in that particular little vignette, Anne Marie, there was a lot of activity in the morning and there was a lot of repetition. But in that vignette, Mrs. Johnson asked, I think, a common parenting question. What is it going to take to get you kids to take responsibility? And how many of you parents have ever asked that question to your children? And I know that you and I have been around on that a couple of times. But maybe there's a better question that's found on your outlines. And if you haven't turned there, let's turn to your outlines, Roman numeral number 1, and that very first question on the outline, hon.
Okay, it reads, when your children are all grown, what would you have liked to have raised? An obedient child or a responsible child?
Now, moms and dads, we want you to know that we are not talking about simply semantics here, the difference between obedience and responsibility, but rather we are talking about a tremendous developmental concept and a separation between these two virtues. In fact, there's a contrast on their outline, hon, and this might help bring clarity to this point. Let's look at it. It's be on the outline.
Right, and it's called obedience versus responsibility. And you'll see one on your outline. It says obedience is required. The missing word is required conformity.
Well, parents give instruction, and the instruction is the prompt. Yes, you might get obedience, but it's the result of the question, the result of the instruction. Now contrast that with responsibility.
Okay, responsibility is voluntary conformity.
So with obedience, honey, mom says, I want you to pick up your toys. With a sense of responsibility, the child doesn't get a prompt from mom. The child just picks up his or her toys because he was playing with them, right? Well, how about the next one?
And then 3 on your outline, obedience is submission to a person.
Usually mom or dad.
And 4, responsibility is submission to a principle.
And how about number 5?
And 5 reads, obedience is a virtue unto itself.
And that's because the call to obedience, if you didn't have it, there wouldn't be any action. But contrast that with a sense of responsibility.
Which responsibility leads to multiple virtues.
And that's because responsible behavior does not call for an external prompt. It's something that is motivated from within. And that's really why if someone comes up to you, moms or dads, and they say to you, "My, what an obedient 3-year-old you have," that really is a compliment. That means that someone has noticed that you put a lot of time and effort into your training. But if someone comes up and says, "My, what an obedient 12-year-old you have," or 13 or 14-year-old you have, that is not necessarily a compliment. In fact, that probably means that you've missed a very important parenting transition. And that's exactly what we want to talk about, that transition. And how do we help our children and help parents move from staying in that state of obedience and help their children gain a sense of personal responsibility? So where do we begin? I think we begin by understanding who owns the behavior, Roman numeral 2 on your outlines, and let's work through this concept.
All right, so if you follow along, who owns the behavior? Parents are responsible for behavioral outcomes as it is related to 3 vital areas of life. The first being morality, the second being health and safety, and then the third being life skills.
And we say, honey, parents are responsible.
Right, they are responsible until the child is able to take ownership of his or her own behavior. As part of a social obligation, parents must assume responsibility for all mistakes and misdeeds, actions and attitudes until they transfer behavioral ownership to the child.
Now, we just said a lot of things right there, so we want to bring some clarity because that could be a scary thought. I mean, here the Ezras are standing in front of you and saying, look, you must take ownership of all misdeeds. You must take ownership of your heart. You must, of your children's hearts. You must take ownership of their actions. Well, when does that stop? And that really gets to the heart of this message. But we said also that you're going to take ownership in the 3 vital areas. One is morality. You know, moms and dads, every day you intervene by your authority and your rightful position as a mom and dad in moral circumstances in the life of your children. We have 2 brothers, and these 2 brothers get into a little squabble, and one takes a toy from another one, and what does mom and dad do? Mom and dad will come in, and they work through this moral situation. They bring to bear in this situation justice in returning the toy, and maybe learning how to say, seeking forgiveness and saying, "I do forgive you." But the point is that parents step into this. You are going to bring about the right moral conclusion because you own this behavior up to a point. When they're young, this behavior belongs to you. We also talked about health and safety issues too. Parents are responsible in working through these issues with their kids.
Now, for example, as a parent, you're not going to allow your 3 or 4-year-old to decide when they're going to go to bed at night, what they're going to eat. They need to brush their teeth. They need to learn. They cannot run out into a busy street. We are going to take ownership and responsibility of their health and safety.
And then there's life skills. Do any of you young people, do you have like piano lessons or homework you have to do? I mean, do your parents make you do it? And that's because they want to set you on the right track. But I do know that your mom and dad really want you to come to a place where you just start doing it on your own and you are, well, self-disciplined enough to see it through. But until that time, what ends up happening is moms and dads, you own all of these behaviors. We're going to talk about why in just a few moments. Honey, let's go.
And we're also going to talk about making the transfer. So the question that parents must wrestle with is what behavior falls under their management and responsibility and what behavior should be managed by the child.
And this is important because age plays a part in this. Let me give you an illustration. Let's say that dad's out in the garage and he's painting some wood, and it's got a little pint of red paint and it's on the floor, and your little 3-year-old goes out into the garage and accidentally spills the red paint. Now paint's on the concrete floor. Now moms and dads, who's going to be responsible for cleaning the paint up? And I know in a perfect world we would say dad would, but we're not in a perfect world, so we'll just leave it generically the parent, right? And I know this to be true, you moms know this to be true, because if you said to your 3-year-old, well, you did it, now you need to clean it up. Moms, you know that you're going to have little red footprints all over the house. You're going to have little red hand marks all over the walls. And the reason why you would never have your 3-year-old clean up spilled red paint is because you know that child is not old enough, that child is not wise enough, that child is not experienced enough to know how to accomplish that task. So in the end, who owns the behavior? We do as moms and dads. You do. But what if it was Jill, my 14-year-old here? What if Jill spilled the red paint on the floor? Who now is responsible for cleaning it up? Who do you think Jill would be responsible?
Me.
That's right, it would be you. But what's the difference? I mean, life's unfair, isn't it? Here, you have to clean it up, but that 3-year-old doesn't. Well, the obvious difference is this, it's age. It's Jill has a certain amount of cumulative wisdom. She has experience, life experience. She has the knowledge. She is responsible. So she can clean it up. So somewhere along the line, in this principle of ownership of who owns the behavior, there is going to be a transfer. And well, let's talk about the transfer right here.
The question that parents must wrestle with is what behavior falls under their management and responsibility, and what behavior should be managed by the child. And we've looked at that part of it already, but so we need to understand that the learning of new behaviors and courtesies will take place throughout life. It starts with the introduction of behavioral expectations. It allows time for assimilation of a new behavior and then passes ownership of the behavior to the child. And then once the transfer is made, it's the child's monkey.
You know, monkeys, these are great analogies. In fact, sometimes there are cute little monkeys just like this. In fact, we commonly refer to these as behavioral monkeys. And what makes this so applicable, honey, is the fact that monkeys are busy little creatures and they love jumping back and forth. And let's talk about what this really looks like in the parenting process.
Okay, and we're going to talk about how monkeys are on your back, following along in your outline. One, in the early years of training, parents carry all the behavior monkeys on their back. Why is that? Because young children are not old enough, and they're not wise enough, nor experienced enough to take ownership of their own lives. So parents are responsible to carry all of their monkeys.
So let's review what we have so far. What we have is just a number, honey, of monkeys that moms and dads carry. And the more children you have, the more monkeys you carry. And you're supposed to, mom and dad, you're supposed to carry these monkeys. These are behavioral monkeys. These monkeys belong to you. Why do they belong to you? Because your children are not old enough. Your children are not wise enough to carry these monkeys. They don't have enough life experience. But someday, these monkeys are going to be transferred to your children. These are responsibility monkeys that they're going to have to assume. And honey, what types of monkeys do we have here? Can we talk about
Well,
that?
before we get there, though, I want to go
Okay.
over that as the children grow in knowledge and life experience, and as they learn and understand what is morally and socially acceptable and required, they must take ownership of their own behaviors, responses, and attitudes. You all need to learn to carry your own monkeys. And so somewhere along the line, there needs to be a transfer of that ownership.
Now let's look at this practically speaking. Now there
Okay.
are a variety of monkeys,
Yeah,
right?
there certainly are.
What's number one?
The first one is your general courtesy monkey. These are the please and thank yous of
Okay,
life.
now this, Kelsey, this is a please monkey. And for a long time, your mom and dad have been working with you. When you were just a little lady, they started prompting you and they started telling you and teaching you about the importance of the please courtesy. And sometimes when you asked for juice or something and you didn't say, may I please have juice, your mom and dad, in an appropriate way, they reminded you. That's because they carried this please monkey. But then you grew up a little older and you became a little wiser. And we'll say by the time you were 5 years of age, you were old enough and wise enough to understand the courtesy that was required. You were ready to take this monkey. So your mom and dad, and one day they were happy to transfer the please monkey. Now I want you to hold the please monkey. It used to be your mom and dad's monkey. Now this monkey is your monkey, okay? Now you're responsible for that please monkey. Don't let that monkey jump back. to mom and dad. And we have maybe a thank you monkey, and this is the same thing, Ashley. Ashley, this monkey was carried by your mom and dad. They used to say thank you quite often for you and remind you, but then came a day when you were old enough and wise enough to be able to understand how appropriate a thank you is, the type of courtesy that represents your family value system, and that day came and they transferred that thank you monkey to you. So now you two girls, you are holding there two courtesy monkeys, and those monkeys now belong to you. So don't let them jump back. What else do we have, honey? What other kind of monkey do we have?
We have the personal responsibility monkeys, the chores, the homework, our little friend Patrick, his school bag, all those things.
Oh boy, well here, Douglas, we're going to give, do you have chores? Do you have things you have to do around the house? Yeah. You don't have to make a bed or anything, do you? Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. Oh, that's safe. Well, there's something, you got to empty your school bag or something like that, right? There's something you have to do that your parents make you do. When mom and dad first started with you, let's say going to school, boy, they would give you a school bag just like we saw up in that little vignette. And what ended up happening is mom was the one always cleaning it out. Well, in your family, your mom and dad just figure, you know best. When that school bag comes home, you're supposed to take care of it. That's your responsibility. They used to do that. That's when they carried this monkey. But there's a chore monkey, and we're going to give that chore monkey to you. All right? And Austin, we got another monkey?
We do the personal heart issue monkey.
Oh, Austin, this is for you. And let me say, moms and dads, to all of you, this is ultimately where you want to be. It's important that we establish the please and thank you monkeys and we get the chore monkeys. But life is more than that. Life is really a matter of dealing with the heart. Austin, when you were young, your mom and dad worked with your heart. And they even told you what you needed to do when you maybe hurt someone. But they directed it. There's going to come a day when we really want Austin to take care of his own heart. So that's another monkey. So would you hold that monkey? Now, parents, Anne-Marie and I have just given you the secret to parenting. In fact, we could, honey, almost close this session down right now because they have it all. What parenting is all about is getting rid of your monkeys. When you get rid of all of your monkeys, it's all over. Except for one thing.
I know, I wish it was that simple.
I know it's on your outline. It's this one thing. It's one fact that monkeys love to jump. And they love to jump back to their original owners. Let's talk about that.
Right, that is the big problem. Monkeys love to jump. They love to jump back to their original owner. And in parenting, there are behavior monkeys that love jumping from the child to the parent, and that's the wrong way. Our goal is to get rid of our monkeys and not collect them.
That's exactly right. And how and when do monkeys jump? Listen, please, to these three key words in this paragraph.
Okay. Monkeys jump when parents continue to instruct and remind a child how to behave or listen to be responsible after the child reaches the age of accountability for a specific skill, task, or behavior. Mom and dad are taking back ownership of the behavior that does not belong to them. And when they do that, the child has no motivation to assume responsibility for it.
Boy, those three key words, honey. After they were talking about parents continuing to instruct and remind a child how to behave after they've already reached a point of accountability. That's what we're talking about. They are taking back the monkey. Let me give you an illustration. Let me show you what this looks like, this teaching. We're going to use Kelsey again here. And Kelsey, let's say that you come to your mom and you say, Mom, may I have some orange juice? We're going to say you're 5 years old. You've had that please monkey for a long time, but you just come to your mom. You say, Mom, may I have some orange juice? Now, what do you think, and we're going to ask the moms and dads here too, what do you think are the three most common responses, which ironically it's given around the world, that moms or dads will give to a child who have been working on this very issue, this very virtue? What's a common response in that moment when your child did not provide that courtesy? What do mothers say? What's number one? Someone take a guess, please, help me. What do you say? Yeah, that's number one. That's exactly. Kelsey, what do you say? What's another one that parents do? That's exactly right. What's the magic word? And a third one is, how do you ask? How do you ask? Now listen, as soon as mom turns and says, now, honey, How do you ask? That monkey leaves the little child and just jumps on top of Mom. Mom just took ownership of this monkey, and it doesn't belong to her. Whose monkey is this? Is this your monkey? What is it doing on your mother's shoulder? Your mother took your monkey. You were responsible for this, but this monkey leaped. And moms and dads, that's exactly what happens in behavior and in the areas of responsibility. She's old enough. She's wise enough. She's experienced enough to have this part of her heart. But what ended up happening, Mom and Dad, we just go and we just grab that monkey. We did it by a simple little prompt. Now the question is, Anne Marie, what could a mother say in that moment so that she or maybe Dad does not take the monkey? We know the answer. Would you like to know the answer? Beg me. You know what? This is actually a perfect teacher's setup because of the illustrative teaching device that's within this question. We do know the answer, but we're not going to tell you. Because if we tell you, then we're going to take your monkey. Now think about this. Because you folks in this room, you adults, you are old enough, you are wise enough, you are experienced enough to come up with the answer. Now listen carefully. But if we give you the answer, we would have robbed you of something very important, the thinking process. And that's exactly what you do as a mom and dad. Whenever you take a behavior that doesn't belong to you, a monkey that's already been passed on, you rob the child of the need to think, which is a prerequisite to becoming a responsible child. And how often does this happen during the day? How many monkeys do you take back during the day? And as you take them back, at every time, you're just taking these monkeys. And the child doesn't have to accept ownership. What else about that, honey?
Well, there's a principle that is there on your outline, which reads, you never quite transfer ownership if you are always reminding your child or teen of what is expected. And I think another way to look at this is requiring obedience is a monkey on the parent's back. That is something that is needful in the beginning. But then too, responsibility is a monkey on the child's back.
And that's exactly where we want to go. We want to transfer it over. Now, these monkeys right here, these are kind of cute monkeys. Is this a cute monkey, Ashley? Yeah. But these monkeys do not stay like that. I'll tell you, we're going to give you another scenario. You know, the problem with monkeys, they grow. I'll tell you, they become little gorillas now. And let me share another story with you. And Braden, I'm going to have you hold that little gorilla, okay? Let's say that you have a little 7-year-old, and the 7-year-old's playing in his room. He's got a bunch of things out that he enjoys. And it's been raining, but now the sun breaks through, and he thinks, I'd like to play in the backyard. And so he gets up from what he's doing. He starts to head out through the kitchen, and there's Mom. And Mom says, now, where are you going, young man? And he says, going to play in the backyard, Mom. And then she starts, doesn't she? She says, no, wait a minute, because she knows he's been playing in his room, so she has an idea of what it might look like. So she begins to do something. She says, now, Braden, did you put your toys away? And Braden's, mm-hmm. And you had your crayons out. You got all the crayons put away? Uh-huh. And Legos are putting back in the can. You know, we said about the Lego. Uh-huh. And you got all of your, you got your bed made? Uh-huh. And your shoes are put away? Uh-huh. Now who's got all the monkeys? You see, the problem we have here is we want him to be a responsible child. But yet, how can he become a responsible child if we're always intervening in the thinking process? If we're going to pick up his behavioral monkeys, then he'll never have to become responsible. So do you know what you need to stop this? You need monkey repellent. That's what you need. You need something to keep these monkeys off. And honey, there is a monkey repellent phrase, isn't there?
There is a monkey repellent, and the key monkey repellent phrase is, do you have the freedom to do that?
You know, moms and dads, words count. Words form concepts, developmental concepts that allows a child to have a deeper understanding of what is expected. This phrase, do you have the freedom, is a life skill phrase. This is a phrase that you want your children to grow up with, because in this phrase is really the infrastructure that allows your child to understand and to accept responsibility. In fact, let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to have you all take your monkey one more time, and we're going to show you guys what this looks like. So we got Braden, our 7-year-old. Although Braden, I know you're not 7, but we got Braden, we'll pretend is in his room and he's playing with all his toys. Now the sun comes out and he says, I'm going to go in the backyard. But he knows, because he's been trained this way, he knows that mom is in the kitchen. And that mom, the door police, is going to ask the big question. She's going to ask me, do I have the freedom to go outside and play? And eventually, moms and dads, that idea, do you have the freedom, that comes from mom and dad's lips, will be transferred and internalized to, do I have the freedom? And that's exactly what's going to happen with little Braden. He's going to be sitting in his room and he is going to ask the question, do I have the freedom to go outside? Meaning, have I taken care of everything that's in my room right here? And as a result of that, he is motivated to pick up. Why? Because really, children do want to be able to face mom at the door and say, when mom asks the question, well, Braden, do you have the freedom to go outside and play? And he really does want to be able to say, yes, mom, I do. Now, we at conferences, where the question always comes to us, well, what if the child lies? What if the child's standard is different than mom and dad's standard of cleanliness and picking up? Well, we'll deal with that a little bit later on, but right now, let's go a little bit further with this teaching, and maybe, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that particular illustration.
Well, not so much the illustration, but just the concept. It truly is a life skill that carries into adulthood, and it's a question that we've often asked ourselves when we wanted to do something. It's like, do I have the freedom? Because we all have responsibilities,
That's
and so
right.
it is a life skill.
And there's another principle right here.
There is. The principle on your outline reads, freedom does not speak of one's rights, but one's responsibility.
That's right. You know, one of the goals that your mom and dad have for all of you, whether it's for the 7-year-old all the way up to a 14-year-old, is they want you to grow up to become responsible adults, responsible citizens. But in order to function as responsible citizens in a free society and function freely even within your family, you must grow and learn to accept responsibility. So these two concepts go hand in hand. Let's move to example 3. We'll talk about the Christmas story here. There's a Christmas special coming on, and it's going to come on at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. And you know what? All the kids in the neighborhood, plus maybe some of the cousins, they're going to come over, and because you got the best TV. In fact, they're so excited about this Christmas special that they came over a couple hours earlier. And they're playing in the backyard and in the garage with you guys. And one by one, all of these children begin to march in to get ready to watch this Christmas special. Now, moms and dads, let's ask you, what is the big question that's commonly asked as all of these children come marching in? What do moms commonly say at this point, when she looks at all these children, knowing that they've been playing outside? Who's going to give me an answer here?
Did you bring the toys in?
Yeah, are all the toys picked up? Did you get them all? And not only do we do that, not only do we begin the process of picking up these monkeys, we'll get very specific. You know, you had the sled outside. The sleds are all supposed to be in. You know, we're supposed to get a snow tonight, and don't bury that sled. And you had the soccer ball out. You know, your father says, no soccer ball in the winter. And you took his white golf balls out in the snow. Who's ever going to find those, the white golf balls? And we want to know, did you put everything in, all the skis and everything? And what are we doing? We're picking up the monkeys again. And usually, Emery, if that happens, what do the children say in that moment? I mean, we only have 3 minutes before the special comes on.
Oh, it's probably pretty typical. The kids come in, they've been playing with everything. Mom asks that big question, did you pick up all the toys? And as kids, it's like, oh, Mom, we forgot. But we promise as soon as the program is over, we will go out and pick everything up. And then Mom says, well, you promise me. Well, she might say that. And he says, oh, yes, Mom, we will do that. Now, unfortunately, see what happens. It depends on what kind of day Mom is having about what's going to happen next. She might say, all right, well, you kids, as soon as it's done, I want you to go out there. And he says, oh, we will, Mom. You're just the greatest. Or she might say, nope, we've been working on this a long time. You kids know what's expected. You need to go out and pick up the toys. And unfortunately, usually what happens then is, oh, but Mom, we're going to miss the beginning of the program. This isn't fair. And then Mom, that sweet lady, something happens to her. She kind of disappears. But so it could be solved much more easily.
I know, and especially, yes, it can be. And let's see how well I've done in my teaching. Let's ask your parents here if they know What is the one question and the only question you really have to ask in this moment when those kids come marching in? What is the big question? Do you have the freedom? That's right. Do you kids have the freedom to be in here now? Do you have the freedom to watch television? That's all you have to do. And when you do, these monkeys, they can't jump on you. These monkeys are right here. And it's beautiful. Because what you're going to do with that question in a repeated basis, you're going to eventually move it to a child and is going to internalize it. So when the kids are saying, hey, we got to go in and watch TV, your kids, your sons are going to be saying, you know what, wait a minute, before we go in, we got to start cleaning up. Because that becomes part of their character. And it gets there because you're not doing the thinking for them. They're doing the thinking for them. You have laid the groundwork for this type of response.
And the advantage for the young people to know this is because you will ask that question to yourself, say, oh yeah, we don't have the freedom to go in until we get this done. Because you kids all know what happens, right? Everybody says they're going to help you clean up afterwards, and then what happens? The program's over, they leave, your aunt comes, picks up your cousins, and who's left to pick everything up? You guys are.
That's right.
So see, this works to your advantage as well.
That's right. And you know, honey, it think it's somewhat manageable if they stay, those monkeys stay that side.
Oh, I know.
Size, but you know, they keep growing. And now we got little gorillas. Little gorillas. So can you hold that gorilla? There's that gorilla, it's a big gorilla. And then when you get someone up into the teenage years, oh my, they become bigger. Okay, do it. You know, does your mom have a gorilla like this around the house? This is a big gorilla, all right? This is a teenage gorilla. And if you got 2 or 3 jumping on you, I mean, no wonder some of you moms look so tired. It's because you have so many monkeys. Well, Jill, could you hold that gorilla for me? Okay, take care of that gorilla. You know, up to this point, honey, we've sort of like laid down the foundation. What we're talking about is issues of courtesy. We are talking about the issues of personal responsibility. I think it would be good to go back to our very first vignette. And now that you've had this teaching, let's find out exactly what is taking place in Mrs. Johnson's kitchen. Can we do that? Let's look at the monitor.
Do you kids have everything ready for school? I don't want to have to remind you once we get in the car.
I think so. Uh-huh.
Who turned on the TV?
You did, Mom.
Well, we don't need the TV on in the morning. Patrick, what is this?
That's my banana peel from Monday's lunch. I was wondering where I put it.
Monday? Patrick, you're supposed to empty your backpack when you get home from school. I've been reminding you of that. Seems like I remind you of it every day. Oh, Whitney. Whitney, you were supposed to have gotten this signed by your father last night. Honey, remember we've talked and talked about you getting your paper signed before you go to bed.
I'm sorry, Mom. I forgot.
And what if Mom forgets, huh? This family would be in big trouble. Patrick, did you remember to make your bed, and did you remember to feed the hamster?
Oh, yeah, I've got to do that.
And Whitney, did you remember to pick up your room? Remember, you're supposed to do that before you come down for breakfast.
No, not yet.
You said that yesterday. You better get it done tomorrow. You know, I'm always reminding you kids of everything. When are you going to start accepting responsibility? Hello? Hi, Mom. No, just getting the kids ready for school. Oh, I don't think so. I am really tired. Feels like I'm weighted down with the pressures of the day, and it's only morning.
I guess we could ask that question. How many monkeys are showing up in your kitchen every morning? We hope through this simple little vignette that you could catch this idea, that we really get into a terrible habit when we're always pursuing our children after they've reached the age of accountability, after they know what to do. If we're always going to remind them, those monkeys are going to jump right back on us. But now, Anne-Marie, let's turn the corner. We want to go to Roman numeral 4, transferring ownership of heart problems. And this really is like the mother lode. This is the most important element of all of this teaching. Because it's one thing to have courtesy down, and it's another important virtue if we can get self-control and responsibility with our chores and things like that. But boy, moms and dads, you really want to get your children to a place where they take ownership of their own hearts. And we want to talk about that. And we want to introduce a concept, honey, we've been teaching this for quite a few years, but let's revisit it and see how it applies in this unique situation.
Okay, A on your outline, we're going to talk about a reflective sit time. And that is a controlled, missing word is controlled opportunity to consider thoughts, actions, or decisions. It is a corrective strategy to help children come to a right response on their own without the lecture. It is used to help them morally process and evaluate their circumstance and actions.
You know, there's two key words. Number one, we're going to provide a controlled opportunity. But I think the other key word there is to help children morally process. Now listen, this is so critically important for this parenting generation. The one thing our children do not do, because the one thing we adults do not do well, is we do not have the ability to morally process, really the ability to look into our own hearts, the ability to make a moral judgment. Part of the reason is because we may not have a full ability or maybe a full warehouse of moral sensibility. I think the other part of that is because we haven't been trained to do this. We have not been given the opportunity, and we want to give that opportunity to your children. Now, what does that look like? When we talk about we want you to morally process, what does it look like every day? Well, what we're going to do is we are going to return to our monitor, and we're going to watch this next little vignette. And let's take a look and find out what's going on in the Johnson's house one more time. So if you would, please to the monitor.
Mom,
Yes, Patrick.
can you sign my paper?
Oh, Patrick, what is this?
This is my paper for school. You just have to sign it right there.
Patrick, I can't sign this paper. This is unacceptable. This is sloppy work. We've been working on your penmanship for years.
Mom, the teachers don't care about my penmanship. They just want to know you saw my work.
I'm sorry, Patrick, I can't sign this. It's too sloppy.
I'll get Dad to sign it.
You will not, young man. You will not ask your father to sign this. Patrick, look at me when I'm talking to you. Did you roll your eyes at me? You rolled your eyes at me. Patrick, you need to go to your room.
My room? Mom, you're not going to do anything drastic, are you? I mean, why are you so upset? What did I do wrong?
You don't know? Well, let me tell you. First of all, you were disrespectful. You weren't looking at me when I was speaking to you. Look at me. You were rolling your eyes. Your paper is sloppy. Your handwriting is a mess. This is just unacceptable. Patrick, you need to go to your room. You need to confess all of this to God. You need to ask His forgiveness, and then you need to come downstairs, confess to me, ask my forgiveness, and then, young man, you are going to redo this paper over again from beginning to end correctly.
Okay, Mom.
Well, there's another vignette. I think maybe we've all experienced. The child comes in, and out of frustration, we are attempting to correct the situation right there on the spot. And we're going to do it with our authority. We're going to step in, rather than at these ages, do it at a time of influence. And Anne-Marie and I are going to come back, and we're going to revisit this scenario. We're not going to talk much about it right now. We want to go on to the second illustration, the second example. And in the second example, we're going to talk about taking ownership of the heart. And I'm going to use an illustration out of my own life with my granddaughter, Whitney. Now, Whitney is, if you're keeping track of our family, Whitney is Amy's number 2. And she's so full of life. She's just a lot of fun, and she's got a lot of energy and always on the go. And we have so often, I know her mom and dad have also, worked with her on, just a few moments of her energy where she could push the button, say, on the van door and slide it back and rock it on its hinges. And that's always one of those things that just troubles Grandpa. I know it troubles Dad and Mom too. And so they've talked to Whitney about it. Well, one day, Anne-Marie was waiting for us, and we had borrowed Aunt Jenny's van for some reason. And I'm bringing Whitney home, and I pull into the driveway, and Whitney hits that button, and the door flies back. And I knew it was going to crash, and sure enough, it crashed on its hinges. And what is the natural response right there? I mean, even though we've been down this road so many times, what's the natural response for parents and grandparents? We want to begin to speak into it, and even speak into it with the lecture. And oh, Whitney, what did you do, Whitney? This, you know what you're going to do, Whitney? You slammed the car door again. We've been working on this, haven't we, Whitney? We have talked to you. Your parents have talked to you about it. This is, maybe I'm going to have you go in the Bible and see what the Bible says about slamming car doors. And we jump right on the child. We want to fix it right then, don't we? Well, that day, by the grace of God, I thought I'd do something different. I thought I'd practice some of my own teaching. And so instead of the lecture, in that moment, what I did is I just brought myself under some self-control, and I said, oh, Whitney, honey, I want you right now to go into the house, and I want you to sit on the couch, and I want you to think about what just happened. Now, Whitney's first response was, well, Grandpa, I don't know what happened. And I said, well, that's why I want you to go in and sit down and think about it. Now, I'm going to step away for a few minutes. In a few minutes, I'm going to come back, and we're going to talk. But I want you just to search inside and tell me what went on. Well, when I left Whitney, we had a little girl that wasn't pleased. But when I came back after about 10 minutes, there was a change in that little girl's heart. And there were a few tears, and I sat down with her, and I said, now, Whitney, honey, can you tell Grandpa what just happened? And she said, yes. She said, I wasn't careful with Aunt Jenny's car door. She said, I slammed it, and I knew I wasn't supposed to. And I knew then. She understood completely. And so I said to Whitney, honey, I want you to sit here now for a few moments, and I want you to think about what must you do to make it right. And so I went away for another 7 or 8 minutes, and then I came back. And I said, Whitney, can you tell me what happened, honey, what you must do to make it right? And Whitney said, I think so. She said, when Aunt Jenny gets in town, I need to call her and ask her to forgive me. And I think maybe, too, I think I'll clean out her van for her. And I knew she had it. Now listen to this. How is it that a child of 7 years of age could get it when all of the lectures could not bring this precept and understanding to her heart? And the reason is because in a reflective sit time, she did receive a lecture, but it wasn't from Mom and Dad. It wasn't from Grandpa. The lecture came from her own heart. That's because now Mom and Dad put moral precepts into her heart that acted as in a form of a monitor, moral monitor of right and wrong. Her heart spoke to her in such a way that we couldn't ever. You see, when we do it, honey, when we jump on that child, we want to fix it right now, don't we?
True.
But letting the child speak is the way.
Right, and usually what we attempt to do as parents, and sometimes even as grandparents, is use our authority. After all, we're older, we're wiser, we're the big people. But we're not talking about a 3 or a 4-year-old now. We're talking a 7-year-old. And she's had years of training, just as many of these young people here have. And so it's the influence that we now have in our young people's lives that we want to use, not so much that
That's
coercive authority.
And so the natural tendency is we jump on the child. Whitney, what did you just do? Let me tell you, Whitney, you slammed the car door. That's what you did. And you're not supposed to. Hey, we've talked about this, haven't we? In fact, you're going to look up all the Bible verses about slamming car doors. I know there's got to be something in there about chariots or something. And then on top of that, Whitney, let me tell you what, you're going to ask God to forgive you, and then you're going to call your Aunt Jenny. That's what you're going to do. And then you're going to have Aunt Jenny. She's going to, who's got the monkeys? Isn't it a natural tendency for us to want to pick up all the monkeys? Isn't it a natural tendency for us to want to fix it right there? When if we just back up and work through this basic precept, this simple principle of simply a reflective sit time, because what it will do is allow the child to go to his or her heart and then allow their heart to give a response. You'll get it, and your child will get it. Now when we go back to that little scenario we saw up there about the mom. Did you see what she did? Mom, could you sign my paper?
Oh, Gary, what is this?
Oh, it's my paper for school. You just have to sign it right there, Mom.
Oh, Gary, I'm sorry. I can't sign this paper.
Mom,
This
why
is
not?
completely, why not? Gary, look at this.
Well,
This
teachers-
place is,
teachers don't care,
I don't care if the
They-
teachers
they
care or
don't
not.
care.
I care. And look at me when I'm speaking
Mom, I
to you.
am looking at you.
You are not looking. Are you rolling your eyes
No,
at me?
no, I didn't roll my
Listen,
eye.
young,
Mom-
I think you need to go to your room.
My room?
Yes.
Mom, you're not going to do anything drastic, are you? I don't know why you're so upset. I just want you to sign my paper.
You don't know why I'm upset.
No, I
Let
don't
me
know why.
tell you why.
Why?
Because first of all, this is totally unacceptable. This laziness. And then you were disrespectful to me. You weren't looking at me. You were rolling your eyes. And we've been telling you you need to have a better attitude. And you need to go and think about it. And what must you do to make it right? And then after that, you need to come and tell me that you're sorry for aggravating me this way. And then you're going to need to redo this paper and so that it'll be neat and work on all of these issues.
Who's got the monkeys? Yeah.
Poor
yeah.
Mom.
Did you? Now, but do you see the principle? Do you see how it works? And so now I'm saying to you young people in this audience, do not let your mom and dad take your monkeys, but especially the heart monkeys. Because those heart monkeys don't belong to mom and dad. Those heart monkeys really belong to you. And you're old enough and you're wise enough. And moms and dads, you just have to allow your children to have opportunity to think through really what are the issues. We have some questions that we want to talk about.
There is an important question.
What-
What could have
Oh,
the
yes.
mom said
That's right.
to Patrick when he came out?
So-
Or to Gary when he came out?
What could the mom have said? Mom, could you sign my paper?
Patrick, what is this?
Oh, it's my paper for school. I just need you to sign it right there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the freedom to sign this paper.
What? You've been going through that parenting class again?
I think maybe,
Mom, we mean you don't have the freedom to sign it.
no, I don't.
Well, why not?
Well, you know what? It might be a good idea if you went and took 5 minutes in your room and just think about why I don't have the freedom to sign this paper.
You know what? No monkeys jump. The reason why no monkeys jump is mom refused to take ownership. Now, mom right there, she slipped. She says, well, let me tell you why. Boom, here goes the monkeys. See, as soon as mom says, let me tell you why, mom is saying, let me get to your heart. Let me fix it. Let me tell you what's wrong. Let me tell you what you need to do to make it right. And when you do that on a repeated basis, how are they going to learn? How are they going to take ownership? When we go back to the Whitney story, it is really quite amazing. Now, here we are a year and a half later on the Whitney story, and I can tell you, to this date, we have not heard of any reports, and we have not personally seen it all, Whitney slamming another car door. Now, what does that say? What that says is the lecture from the heart is far greater than a lecture from mom and dad when you come to an age of accountability and where we're trying to communicate this sense of responsibility. There are two key questions that we want to ask, and you have this on your outline. This will bring us close to wrapping up. What did you do? That's a question we want to ask. And what must we do to make it right? What did you do, and what must we do to make it right? And I guess the other question too, honey, is what do these guys, what do they really hear when mom and dad move into the lecture mode?
Well, we received a letter from a parent after having done this teaching, and so I'm going to share this with you as an illustration of what our children actually hear. And we do have permission to use this letter. It says, our daughter was 5 and generally sweet little girl. We had an issue with her behavior, so we went to her room to talk it through. Well, not realizing what I was doing was lecturing, and she said, I thought I was giving the moral reason why, but I was really lecturing. I began to tell her this and that and the other about her actions. She is not characterized by sarcasm, so what happened next was nothing less than God waking me up to what a bad habit I had fallen into. I saw that she was looking around and bouncing a little, so I made eye contact and asked, what did I just say to you? Her answer, with a straight face, she said, blah, blah, blah. Mom goes on to say, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I knew enough to stop blying at her in that moment. Then I took it to God and asked him to show me what I had been doing, and he did, and then I laughed and cried. And with the Lord's help, I stopped lecturing. Every so often, the Lord will gently remind me of the blah story, and it sets me straight every time.
That's a great letter, and I think that's a really a great reminder sometimes of what it sounds like when we move into that lecture mode. And now none of you young people need to nod your head, but sometimes doesn't it sound a little bit like blah, blah, blah? Well, you know, we do know one thing about you young people. You learn very quickly. And honey, you have some illustrations about how fast they learn.
Right, and it is important as parents that you realize that, and we've had opportunity to share this quite a bit, and we were up at a camp one summer and had done part of the teaching, and so one brave mom decided that she would take just what she had learned in the morning session and see how this was going to pan out. So they had returned to their cabins, and her 12-year-old son was getting ready to go to the next activity. So she just said to him, she said, do you have the freedom to go? And he looked at her and said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, what do you think I mean? He says, well, I've rolled up my sleeping bag and I've put my dirty laundry into the laundry bag, and then there were some other things he needed to do. So without her even sitting him down and explaining this, he knew what his responsibilities were and are. And you know, we've given you the two key questions to ask, and that sometimes there will be an opportunity for the children to go sit and think about it. And then there'll be other times, particularly as they get used to this whole concept and their heart will be doing the teaching almost immediately, that you can just have this kind of running dialogue. I was visiting the home of one of my daughters and visiting with one of my granddaughters in her bedroom. And like many of you as moms, my daughters are working too on teaching them the skill of cleaning their bedroom. And they're still working on it. And this particular day, there were items of clothing that were not in the dresser. They were actually on the floor. And so Grammy thought, well, you know, maybe I can help out the cause here. And so I was talking to my granddaughter and I said, so, where are the clothes? They're on the floor, Grammy. And where do they belong? In the dresser, Grammy. I said, and what is the problem here? She goes, I didn't put them away. I said, oh no, I think it's something deeper than that. And she looked at me, she goes, oh, don't make me say it. And I said, you know what, you're gonna feel a lot better if you do. And she looked at me and she said, it's a lazy heart. And I said, that's right. I said, and so now what do you need to do to make it right? She said, I need to put my clothes away. I said, yes. And so, you know, that all took maybe 2 minutes to go through, but she realized what she had done
That's
wrong
right.
and what must she do to make it right.
A few final thoughts too, honey. There are time limit issues. I used the illustration with Whitney early on, and I said I went away for 10 minutes, and then I came back. Now, I determined the time that I was away. There will be some situations when we're dealing with older children that you might say, I want you to go to your room and I want you to think about it, and when you have the answer, then come out. So you might want to work it that way, but there are some cautions, especially when you're dealing with the firstborn daughter. Because if you say to the firstborn daughter, oh, honey, I want you to go to your room and I want you to think about it, and you're not to come out until you have an answer. Now, they very well may think, my room, by myself, no siblings, I'll see you on Tuesday. You know? So you might want to put that child, you know what, honey, I think you need to sit at the kitchen table and think about it. And then when you have the answer, you can get out. And maybe the youngest, who they're just social, they don't like being isolated, maybe that one will go. So just use some common sense, know your own child. And honey, how do we practically now teach this concept to children? I know that these children all have it, but for others who are going to be joining us, how can we take these monkeys and actually teach this precept?
And that is critical, and that's something that we always consider with whatever we teach, that it's transferable. And I thought about that. I thought, well, how young can a child be to understand this concept of monkeys? And so I happened to have Jenny's two children over, her two oldest, and they were 4 and 5 at the time. And I thought, let me try this out with them. So I got my two monkeys out, I sat the girls down on 2 chairs, and I said, girls, Grammy wants to teach you something. So I had my little monkeys here, and I started with Caitlin, remember she was 5, and I said, Caitlin, I said, you see this monkey? I said, this is the please monkey. Now your mommy and daddy have been teaching you since you were just a little girl that when you want something, you're supposed to say please, right? And she agreed, yes, they have been teaching her that since she was just little. I said, but you know what? You're 5 now, and so you know what you're supposed to say. So I'm going to play a little game of let's pretend. I want you to ask me for a glass of juice and ask me properly, and I'm going to show you how this monkey is going to become yours. And I said, do you understand? And she acknowledged she did. So she goes, Grammy, may I please have a glass of juice? And I said, good job, Caitlin. And I put the monkey on her back, on her little lap, and she was so pleased she did it right. Now, Kara, her younger sister, is only 11 months younger than Caitlin, and her first words were not mama or papa. They were, me too. And so she was very true to form, and she says, Grammy, me too. I says, you too, Kara. I said, you know what? Since you were a little girl, your mommy and daddy have been teaching you that when somebody gives you something, you're supposed to say thank you. Isn't that right? And she acknowledged yes. So I'm going to pretend I'm giving you a glass of juice, and you respond correctly. I said, do you understand? And she said she did. So I pretended I was giving her a glass of juice, and she goes, thank you, Grandma. And I said, good job. And I put the little monkey on her lap. And I'm thinking, now how do I show them how parents take these back? So I said, now girls, we're going to play Let's Pretend one more time. And I started with Caitlin, and I said, now Caitlin, I want you to ask me for a glass of juice, but do not say please. Do you understand? And yes, Grammy. She goes, Grammy, can I have a glass of juice? And I said, oh, Caitlin, how do you ask? And of course she's looking at me with like, you told me not to say please. I says, it's okay. I said, but you know what? As soon as Grammy said, how do you ask? I took this monkey. And whose monkey is this? And she says, it's my monkey. I says, that's right. It doesn't belong to me. And you know what? Every time your mommy and daddy remind you to do something you already know, they're taking back a monkey that doesn't belong to them. And then I went through the same thing with Kara. Now, usually when I teach something this extensive, I attempt to remember to tell my children that I've done that, only I forgot on this occasion. So a couple of days later, I get this phone call from my son-in-law, Paul. We go through all the niceties, and he goes, Mom, by the way, he says, what have you been teaching the grandchildren? And I thought, why? What happened? He says, well, this morning at breakfast, I said something to Caitlin, and she just looked at me, and she said, Dad, it's not your monkey, it's my monkey. So she evidently got it. So it's that simple. And obviously, those of you that have older children, you can do it a little bit more maturely, but they can catch on.
Well, we hope this has been a help to you. And I want to bring closure to this particular teaching by going back to that opening statement, the question that we asked, if someone comes up to you and says, my, what an obedient three-year-old you have, that is really a compliment. Someone has noticed that you've put a lot of time and energy into your training. But if someone comes up and says, my, what an obedient 12-year-old you have, that might be a sign that you have missed a very important transition, and that is the transition of the heart to a sense of personal responsibility. We hope that this has been a help to all of you. Anne-Marie, I know you and I have enjoyed teaching this, and we trust that even the young people in this audience have picked up a few lessons. So we want to personally thank all of you, and we want to say thank you to those who are joining us after this has all been put together. And it's been a joy for you and I, once again, to be bringing these messages. God bless all of you, and we'll see you the next time.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to see more, and check out the growingfamilies.life website to find more resources and to get connected.